Let's do a part 2 to the stage design tutorial stage. I posted this in Richmond Action's Slack and got a little bit of feedback and some comments. So, kind of within the Slack, some people were asking me questions on whether or not I design just kind of on this, I guess, generic bay, or do I design for the stage, the bays themselves, and I definitely think it's preferable to design for the bay itself. Especially at Richmond Rod and Gun Club, we have certain restrictions on different bays, so it's much easier to do that. It's also much easier to use and design the bays, or design for the bays that you have in mind, just because you get the actual dimensions. So Richmond Rod and Gun Club's bays have been scanned into Practisim, so it's incredibly helpful. Another way to kind of build for the bay that you have in mind is you can actually go to like Google Earth, find your range, and then use their measuring tool to kind of get a bird's eye view and actually measure out the bays to get a rough idea. And so if you do that, I would suggest that you actually build specifically, let's just say, using the tool, it shows that you have like 18 yards across at the bay. I'd actually plan to be kind of like 2 to 3 yards smaller on both sides and try to fit it within. And then you can kind of, once the stage starts getting built on the bay, you can kind of expand it. So there were a couple things that were brought up, and I had mentioned that sometimes I take a break from designing the stage and just come back and revisit it, kind of like a day later. So let's kind of do that and see what we come up with here. So I'm just going to reset this a little bit by deleting out some things I was using just to kind of dress up the stage. This stage is actually going to be used in this coming weekend's match. It's a match that we're sponsoring at Richmond in Action. It's the intro match, and this stage will actually be on base 6. So let's just kind of throw it on that bay and see while we're going to use this stage, I'll see if I can create something more interesting. So when I was looking at this, there's a couple things I don't like about the stage. So even though we're using it, I think it's solid enough. There's some things that I still don't like about the stage. I don't know why the highlighting feature is being so weird, but bear with me for one moment. But just looking at the stage, you can kind of see that it's pretty small. This bay at Richmond isn't even a very large bay. And yet, it really isn't using the bay very well. So, let me just remove these things. You can see that it's pretty... So this bay at Richmond Rod and Gun Club is probably about, 17, maybe 18 yards wide and about 18-ish yards deep. So it's not a very big bay. And just looking at this too, you can kind of see that all along here on the right side and the left side, not using these berms very well. So I've currently placed this a little bit farther back so I can kind of stretch out the steel. They're pretty close to kind of the safe legal distance. So let's just do that, and then let's just kind of play around with some things to kind of make use of the berms a little bit more. Feels like a target can maybe be back here. Yeah, we'll play with that. Okay, something that I didn't like with the original design is this position kind of right here in this corner. I don't like that you can kind of see this target a little bit. So one of my initial thoughts when I was just kind of looking at the stage is kind of thinking that I might pull this farther back. And given that we have the space, I think that actually might work pretty nicely. So let's just kind of mess around with this and see what comes out of this. Okay, that kind of helps hide that. I'm kind of thinking that I'll shoot T4 from back here, then instead just kind of stretch out the bay a little bit. This target's being a little bit of a problem here. Turns out shoot through, so maybe I need to pull this in a little bit more. That's a little better. Okay. Let's just get out a couple more fault lines here. I'll just kind of piece these together and then let's start blocking these so that not too much. Okay, these need to be blocked too. Safe. It's actually doing okay too. I don't like that you can see that T4 from here. So go back to this L shape. Where'd that go? Alright, that's good, but blocks it too much. Looks pretty good. I'll force this one to be shot through this gap. It's too far back. Still a little bit too far. That's good. Get blocked there. That's pretty good. Alright, so this target, I actually got asked this too, when it's visible from two different positions, so it's asking me how I orient it. And I would do it just that way, where I kind of, and so it can be visible from, or T3 is visible from over here, as well as over here. So I kind of split the difference, that way, it kind of has a similar presentation to both angles. I might tweak that if I think that one path is favorable. So, if I think I need to balance it out just so that it's not so obvious to, just shoot it that way. Let's try that. I might open this up a little bit more. Excuse me. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Got another popper maybe. Not quite where it needs to be. that's okay. I just exposed T15 a little bit more just so that there's a little bit more to do if, shooting this way. Felt a little bit like there's nothing to do other than shoot T11. Change that. Quite a bit of stuff to do on that side. Okay, so I probably would readjust this. This looks like it might be a good spot. If I put the start position back here, people are just going to go right or left. So in that case, I would just let people do start anywhere. But it feels like something like this might be kind of a cool start position. Yeah, so you can kind of see how this gets expanded out. I kind of think this looks quite a bit better. The stage looks a little healthier. We're kind of using all the berms. And shooting area just looks, manageable, but just bigger. The stage, I think, looks a little bit more interesting too. So I think that's pretty cool. But let's see. Before I really determine a start position, I'll go back to kind of my steps. And so what I'm looking at now is round count, and we're way over. We're at 35 rounds. So definitely too much. So when we kind of get in that situation, like where I've overbuilt, I start to think about, well, which targets need to be here. So T11 and 2, 1, 15, 14, all this stuff kind of in the back portion of the stage. T9, all seem like they serve a purpose, forcing people to come to these other positions. What doesn't feel like is necessary are these targets at the end. T3 I like because it gives some flexibility to shooting at different positions. But this stuff in the middle feels unnecessary. It's kind of like too many poppers. And T10 and T12 don't really do anything. Like P5, this popper here kind of forces you into this corner anyways. So yeah, this just seems redundant. Just remove these two for now. See if I can get a little bit more distance here. I'm going to remove this too because I feel like that just doesn't need to be there. So on a target like this, coming in this way, I want it to be challenging but not punishing. Looks pretty good. Go for some more distance. T I have to consider for T7. All these poppers feel a little unnecessary still too. T9, 13. I feel like I could try to, maybe I can fit a popper there. Let's check if that's safe though. Yeah, that should do. Okay. It's kind of a cool spot for that. Can't see it too, so that fits perfectly. A little close there. I kind of want to hide that popper right here. Kind of cool, I think. Half presentation incentivizes you to shoot it more from over here, but it's tough. I don't know, I kind of like that. Like this T12 kind of is a weird target. T1 is also kind of like that. I'll still check these other poppers, but this looks pretty good. I'll just check some distances here, make sure they're safe. So that didn't work. Yeah, that'll be fine. Okay. So overall, this looks pretty good. So at this point, I'd start looking at the start position, try to figure out, if I can put it someplace where I can get three viable plans. I kind of like this already, how it is, just because there's so much to shoot right away. Definitely could shoot your way forward, maybe out to here, back across, and then with like a slight lean or step, you can maybe get that. I don't know if you go forward still. Here you could start on T1 and go out, work your way around. Guess you can also probably retreat here. We'll go this way. Let's try it. Maybe it should be. I don't know if there's ever a time that you go this way and back, but I don't know. I won't worry about this too much, but yeah, let's just say that the starting position was here. I felt like a retreat to this back right corner wasn't quite viable enough. Let's just say that I don't know. The most obvious plan was to shoot this way and then work your way back down and around and finish up here. And the only other option was to go forward and shoot your way out into here and then backwards and then kind of finish right here. If that was kind of like the only two options, then I was kind of trying to go for a third, and there was one like this way, backwards and then across and then maybe back this way and then into the front. I might modify something like this, so I might open this up some so the retreat isn't as punishing, and maybe I would see if I could open this target. I'll move that after. So that people could get to here and then back out of this target a little bit more comfortably. So maybe something like that would be a good way to balance that out. Okay, but pretty happy with this, the way this kind of looks. Yeah, I think there's a high chance that we'll see this at Richmond action at some point. I'll probably put it into some sort of match. So anyways, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.